Welcome to Code Konvos. I'm John Dean, and today I'm joined by Dr. Malak Doss. She is a consultant psychiatrist. Welcome, Malak.
Thank you, John.
So before we start, I've always wanted to know the difference between psychiatry and psychology. So can you explain that?
I'm always asked this question. So psychiatry is a branch of medicine. Psychology isn't. So it's basically psychiatry, you can prescribe medications and do therapy, but psychology, you only do therapy.
Ah, okay. So how did you get into psychiatry?
Okay, so I started with med school. I always liked medicine.
Right.
So I started with med school, and then I chose psychiatry because my grandfather is a psychiatrist, my mother, great-grandfather, so...
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, so they were a big influence on you deciding to move into that.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that? You were brought up in a household that used psychiatry to...
No, not at all.
No?
No.
You were just drawn to it?
I liked it.
Okay.
But it was my choice, so it was their encouragement and my choice.
Okay. And currently, where are you based? Where do you work?
I work at the Behman Hospital.
Okay, and that's
in
here
Cairo.
in Cairo.
Yes.
Okay, and in that hospital, what's your main day to day?
I work with child and adolescent and addiction.
I see. Child, adolescent, and addiction.
And women. I have a special interest in working with women too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is considered a child in age range? Just so
0 to 18.
0 to 18.
Mm-hmm. And young adults till 21 or 25. I work with that age group.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And generally that's dealing with people, children and women that have psychological issues.
Yes.
Is that the way to say it?
Mm-hmm.
And then what's the process then? How would you receive a patient?
Okay.
What comes next?
So someone comes to clinic who wants an assessment for whatever reason. It can be a mental health issue, a mental health diagnosis, or can be just a phase or a problem they're going through.
Okay.
So they come for an assessment, and then we can have a treatment plan and come up with a treatment plan and then direct them what they need. If they need therapy, if they don't need anything at all, if they need medication or they don't need medication. So we formulate together, myself and the client or the child or the adolescent, the treatment plan.
Okay, and then I know this is completely changing direction, but obviously at KODE we're a sports club, and as we developed the KODE sports framework, psychology or mindset of the athlete was very important. It was a heavily weighted part of our program. Have you worked with children in sport since you've been working in psychology? You have?
Yes, a lot.
Okay, good, because that's what I want to talk about today. Okay, so within sport, where would you see psychological maybe challenges or issues that are coming because of the sport? Do you see that? Do you see people moving in sport and then getting issues that because of the sport?
Yes, I do. So let's just talk about the benefits first. So there's a lot of benefits and positive things from sports.
Yeah.
The physical health, mental health, improving mood, improving self-esteem, decreasing stress, all of that is I really do see that.
Yeah.
So this is very important.
And most people feel that when they're playing or
definitely.
being active.
Yes. So this is one thing. Another thing with the benefits with sports is that a lot of kids are not very academic, so they can excel in other areas.
Okay.
So when they excel at sports, this makes them feel that they are doing something.
Right.
Because when they're not doing well at school, and unfortunately with schools, they only assess the academic part.
True.
So they need to excel somewhere. So when they excel at sports, it's a game changer for their self-esteem and how they are as a person.
I see.
So this is something that I really do see often. So that's the positive part. The negative part, unfortunately, I do see a negative part too. So anything in excess can be negative. Okay. So if we do anything too much of anything, can be not very good.
Right.
Okay, so the negative part is the competitiveness. So when parents push kids to be ultra competitive and the child is not competitive and they just push him, because in some cases parents they just want to do their own thing, or they wanted to be an athlete, so they're doing this, they're pushing their child to perform something that they had wanted to perform. Other things I see is when parents push their kids to do something they don't like. So I will tell parents that they should give them a choice, help them in choosing and giving them a wide range of options of sports, and then they support them in one thing.
Okay.
But then when they push them in something that they don't like, it doesn't really work out well at the end. And
that's something I struggle with as a parent as well.
Yes.
When when do you know you're pushing too far? Because obviously lots of children, you know, eat your vegetables. You know, no, should I push him? Should I not? Well, I think I should. You know, maybe I shouldn't. But in sport, it's the same. Like, if my child is resisting or wanting to change direction, how do I know, you know, when I'm pushing too hard?
Okay, so there's no black and white answer to this.
Okay.
So you use your common sense, you understand your child. Obviously, as a parent, you understand your child very well. So you push until you feel that they really don't like what they're doing. So you do your best. You take them to the sport, you push them, you encourage them, you watch them, you do a lot of things, and you explain to them the benefits, and you do this for a certain amount of time. And if it's not working, then it's not working. So you just give it some good amount of time. So what is this amount of time? I can't say in numbers, but you just use your common sense.
Right.
And so, for instance, if you're pushing and everyone around you is telling you, no, it's not, even the coach is telling you, that's not working for the child, this is too much, he doesn't like it, then just take this advice and you can choose something else. I
see. So you're getting, other people are seeing the struggle in the child as well.
And you're not seeing it. So sometimes as parents, we want our kids to be the best.
Yeah, obviously.
So we just push and we think that we're doing the best for the kid, and then sometimes it's not the best.
And do you hear parents that have this almost, they have the dream of their child,
yes,
and you see straight away, come on, like it's not going to happen. And so it's almost that the parent wants it more than the child, and we all think our kids are the best, right?
Yes.
So that doesn't help. Okay, so is there signs you see in children where it's a bit earlier than, like, when that kid is having a breakdown, for example, or it's really starting to become traumatic for the child? Is there early signs where we can, you know, almost like, I should start thinking about this now?
Okay, so if the child is physically worn out from the sport, so this is something that we see, that they're tired, they're not getting enough sleep, they're not eating well, and they're physically drained. So this is one thing that you should watch out for, because if they're physically drained and always fatigued, this can affect their mental health, and then they won't be able to concentrate at school, they won't do well at school, and they'll always be tired. So that's one thing that you should watch out for, and just have a balance. So the best thing is just to have a balance in everything. So if you feel that your child is worn out and just doing the sport all the time and not having time to do anything else, so you need to rethink about what's important and what's not important.
Because
think about priorities.
Unhappiness can also cause fatigue, right?
Yes.
I mean, we've all been unhappy and we've all felt tired.
Yes.
So,
and fatigue can cause unhappiness.
Okay.
So if you're constantly not sleeping, for a child, sleep is very important. If you're not sleeping, you're not doing anything except the sport. Especially there's some kind of very competitive sports that I think sometimes make the kids overdo it sometimes. Right. So it's overdone in some kind of sports.
Yeah.
Especially like gymnastics. I see this in gymnastics with girls, young girls in gymnastics. So I see this often, pushing them to just do something that they're not able physically to do.
And actually, you mentioned gymnastics, but what we're seeing in research and in real life is the countries, especially in gymnastics, that are moving away from this sort of very tough, regimented, almost painful, definitely painful option. We're moving towards the Japanese model, which is more holistic and don't train one thing until it breaks, you know, and don't train as hard.
Yes.
And we're seeing success come out of those countries. So I know in Egypt this is happening. We're moving towards these models where we are considering, you know, the whole child, not just, you know, not just the old ways of drilling. You know, work hard and you'll succeed. So for parents that maybe when they look at their child and they're in sport and they're starting to question, is this too much for them? Are they unhappy? Do you think one of the options should be, I should try another academy, I should try a different coach, a different system to see if the change in the environment helps? Or do you think it should be straight away, just leave the sport?
It depends on the child and depends on the situation. So every situation is different. So I can't generally say that every child, if they're unhappy in whatever they're doing, we say, let's go do something else.
Right.
Because the child is learning resilience too, and they have to learn to be perseverant in whatever they're doing.
True.
So you can't just say, okay, leave, that's not good, let's leave and do something else, because that's not life, right?
Yeah.
So it really depends on the situation. So if the child tends to just, whatever they start, they just leave, and this is a trend that they're doing in everything, then you don't support them to do that. Then you give them the support and see where the difficulty is and help them with the difficulty, rather than just do whatever they want to do.
Okay.
But if it's not, and the child does not have this trend, and you feel that this is what they're saying really sounds very logical and they've tried several times, then yes, you can change. So it really
Right.
depends. So the one thing that I can say is good communication. The parent with the child is the best thing. So just good communication, try to understand where this is coming from, understand the logic, because children have logic. We as parents think that we know it all and they just don't understand. No, they do have logic and they do have opinions that can be the right thing. So just listen to them and see what this makes sense. You weigh the pros and cons and you try, support them, and then at the end it is the child's choice.
Right.
Depends, of course, on the age of the child too. So the variable of the age and variable of the situation. So there's no right and wrong answer in this.
Okay. So it sounds like it's basically the parent has to get intelligence based around psychology,
Yes.
at least some that forms that common sense. Do you have tips for parents that are thinking about communicating with their child more, but is there better times? Does it have to be consistent? You know, how would you start this talk? Again, when and where?
So there always has to be some communication going on there. Maybe at lunchtime, dinner, weekend, there should be some activity they're doing together. So there should be something like a certain a relationship with the child, and every child separately. So they just need to give this time for the child, and maybe just open topics and have open-ended questions and let the child just talk.
Right.
Just not asking him closed-ended questions, open-ended questions, and let them just talk and understand how they're thinking. And this is a very good way to figure out if something's going wrong at school or in their life, or if there's some kind of abuse. So this is a way of finding out difficulties.
Okay.
So this can work for everything, not only sports.
So
everything
just asking them questions.
Just asking them questions, giving them feedback, sharing with them your own experience, and just say, you know what, when I was young, this was difficult to me too, and just normalizing difficulties and being honest, apologizing when you do something wrong.
True.
So I'm a parent, and I try to do that.
Yeah. It's a good practice.
Yes.
And it's nice when children see that you can be wrong.
Yes.
And what you do after that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what would you say in your practice? Do you see anything sort of building, getting greater? Any issues that we can, we should be worried about as parents? Because for us, the world is changing fast.
Yes.
Right, we've come from a non-internet world with that generation, so we're feeling it. But our children are being born into this new world. What do you see as the challenges? I suppose is a better question that are coming that we're not quite aware of, or we should be more aware of.
So this is generally speaking. That's not only in sports. That generally speaking,
the challenges in children and young people.
I think the online abuse, maybe. The bullying that's going on online, because the kids are a lot more aware, and they have other social media venues like Snapchat that we're not very familiar with. So they have so many things that you can't monitor what's going on. So something can be going on and parents are just not there. So this is difficult. So there's a fine line between you want to give them their autonomy and do whatever they want, and then you're worried and don't know what they're doing. They're just sitting in their room, and something really bad can be going on.
But what do you think? Like, you have children yourself?
Yes, right? I do. Yes.
So how old are they?
They're 13 and 11.
Okay. Okay. So they're the age where this must be happening, right? So what was your decision before you were talking about devices with them? How did you approach it?
This was one of my biggest challenges, especially with my son. It was a challenge to give them the freedom to do what they want and the autonomy. And at the same time, I just want to make sure that they are safe and not doing anything that can hurt them in any way. So, of course, I explain, as every other parent, the pros and cons and what can be going on and the problems that can occur and all of that. And then we have this parental control that's there till the age of 13. So certain websites they can't access, certain games and all of that. They can't access certain things, and then there's a time limit to that, because the other issue is not only the content, is the time spent on the device.
Right.
So this was another challenge for me, that we put screen time on the device, and this was a way to just have some structure. So that's one challenge. But then again, we go back to communication and honesty. And I explained to them the most important thing is honesty. I don't care about the phone, anything, just honesty and communication. So I think this was the most thing that helped me personally with my children.
Right. So yeah, you've said our value in our family is honesty. We go back to that.
Yes.
That's the base.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. That's just, one of our values at KODE as well. Yes. Nice link. Okay, so when it comes to sport, we need to get back onto sport.
Yes.
So as children enter competition, this is where we see pressure coming in. When children receive pressure from competition, we'll just use sport as the example, does anything happen differently to their brain, to the way they think and behave? Does it affect them?
Okay, so there's healthy competition that leads to resilience, and there's unhealthy competition that can cause trauma.
Okay.
So healthy competition is pushing the child to their limit, to do their best, to persevere in whatever they're doing, to encourage them, to accept losses.
Right.
So all this is healthy competition, not to compare them with other people, and that's what parents sometimes do. And to teach the child not to just look at other people's success and be jealous, no, look at your own thing. So that's some healthy competition that can push people forwards, because people are pushed forwards with competition, right? So that's a good, healthy amount of competition. But then when you push it too much, it becomes unhealthy, it becomes jealousy, it becomes fighting, it becomes parents fighting with other parents, the child not wanting to lose, and then if they lose, that's the end of the world. And then it becomes too much, and the concentration is only on the goal, not the process. And it can become traumatic at the end. So it depends. A certain amount leads to resilience, too much leads to trauma.
Okay, so, but do you, as a parent, what happens if you, no fault of your own, but you've grown up in a family with quite a closed mindset, and you yourself as a parent has a closed mindset, and you don't understand there is this way of developing through understanding the process and not just the goal. How would you make or convince a parent to essentially open their mind and see that the journey is the fun bit? How would you convince someone that, look, get into the Olympics shouldn't be the goal, like, or they'll miss the fun in the middle? What do you say to a parent?
I try to explain to them from a scientific point of view, and from what I see in the clinic as kids when they grow older, and when this is done to them several times, and they just don't like what they're doing, and they're pushed, their self-esteem goes down, and I explain to them all these examples. So some parents can accept and are open-minded enough to understand this, some others don't. So sometimes I succeed, other times I don't.
And then you're just hoping that over time more and more people move into this world of, you know, being a bit more aware, I guess. Okay. Do you think athletes that have been through the journey should be coming back and talking to the young athletes about the pressures of competition and what they wish they'd done differently?
Yes, definitely.
I think that can help.
I encourage that.
Okay.
Yes.
So today, if you're a child in sport, your role model will probably be someone within sport.
Yes.
Do you watch sport yourself? Do you ever?
Not that much, no.
Okay, I was going to say, do you ever watch people on TV in sport and look at them and ask yourself, is this the right role model for my children? Because TV is a big influence in sport, how we watch it. And we see it all the time, that the players are not presenting in the best way. And there's a lot of research that goes into this to show that, unfortunately, as you get closer to the top, you have to start to become more ruthless, and you have to drop your values of honesty, positivity, etc. Because if you don't make it. So how would you convince parents that, you know, how do you keep your child straight if they are going into performance? Because you know, if the influence is to break some of your values, how do you motivate someone to stay on track and keep their character honest and strong?
So what I tell parents is that you should just look at the child from far away. So you want your child to be happy and successful in whatever they're doing, right?
Okay.
So you want holistically for the child to do well. If you push them in only one part and make them excel in sports on the expense of values, so then something else is dropping. So they're not succeeding in everything. They're not succeeding in their values.
Right.
So you should push a bit of sports, a bit of academic, a bit of values, and all together, not just one thing.
Okay.
So the child can be succeeding and happy overall.
Okay, so you're keeping that vision.
That's balance. That vision that you look from here, and then there's this balance.
Widening the field.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the top, or as you're chasing performance, do you see any issues come in? As you increase performance, do you see any different psychological issues come in, or mindset issues for young people especially?
Yes, a lot of anxiety.
Anxiety.
Yes.
Okay, and for people that aren't sure what anxiety is, what's an easy way to understand anxiety?
Worrying about performance, just concentrating about their performance and winning.
Okay, worry. Yeah.
Not wanting to lose. And when they lose, they become very stressed and very unwell.
Okay.
They compare themselves with others and they become just concentrated on that. They don't do well in their academics because they're so geared in and so concentrated on sports. And so when they don't do well, their self-esteem goes down and just trickles a lot of negative emotions.
Okay, so so the anxiety can trigger this spiral.
Yes, spiraling down.
Yeah, and anxiety is just worrying about the future. Essentially, your brain is in the future, and
yes.
so it's not actually there. So can you flip that around by sort of reverse engineering that? Like, yes, go into the future, but changing maybe what you're thinking and feeling about. Is that an option?
You can't reverse 100%. So some people are more prone to becoming more anxious. So you help them with things like convincing them and using cognitive techniques as in cognitive behavior therapy and just giving them some ways of relaxation and so forth. But sometimes you don't want to just make the anxiety go away 100% because some anxiety pushes you to go forward.
Okay.
So sometimes things can help them a bit.
Right. So on the topic of performance sport and young athletes moving up the ladder, what other challenges would you see that parents should be aware of?
So one thing is anxiety, as we talked about the anxiety. That's one major thing. The other thing is which I see often is eating disorders, relationship with food and body image. What we do sometimes is we try to make them decrease this intensity of sports because they use sports to lose weight and to how they view themselves and to look better. This is another thing with parents that they sometimes point out to their body and how it looks and how they should be doing the sport to look better. So that's one thing that parents should watch out for.
Right. And I've seen that also, obviously, actually we were talking about judo on another episode. And one of the things in judo is you've got to cut weight, you've got to be a certain weight when you compete. And even if you're 8, 9, 10 competition level, you're still on a fixed weight, so you have to diet. Yes. So what advice would you give parents that might be in sport where weight is an issue and could be something especially coaches might notice and point out? What advice would you give parents to help your children become balanced, basically, with their eating and the way they look and feel?
Okay, so this example I see a lot in gymnastics. So girls have to be a certain size and weight and shape to perform. And coaches and parents often comment about their bodies. And this turns into a lot of self-esteem issues, a lot of body image difficulties. So my advice would be not to comment about body and weight. So
our advice is always with clubs to have two pathways. One is more recreational, one participation, get in, have fun. And then that should feel completely different to a performance pathway. So I think as well in gymnastics, the mistakes a lot of parents make is also what we talked about earlier, believing their child is going to be the next, world champion. So what advice would you then give, for example, the coaches of an academy when it comes to looking at their athletes and when they can put some pressure, because at performance, weight matters, strength matters, the body does matter. What could a coach do to know, especially how can I approach that issue with a child without mentally hurting them?
Okay. So what I advise coaches is to see kids holistically. So a child has so many other aspects other than their performance at sports. Right. So a child is a human who has so many other things. So just don't look at one thing. And understand that everyone has capabilities. So one child can have a certain capability, the other wouldn't. So you can't compare. It's unfair to compare. It's like comparing, why do you have dark skin, why do you have light skin? You can't compare. Right. This is an ability and this is another ability. So you understand that this is something they're born with. The other thing is not to compare, because with comparisons, this creates a lot of jealousy with team members. And always praising the child, because that's another thing that I see with coaches, that they don't praise them enough. And when they don't praise them enough, they just push their limits too much until they become overly stressed. So praise. Right. You be honest about your feedback and say what's going wrong, but then give a lot of praise for the good work. And values, of course. Values is very important, because with values, this reflects on your performance, especially in team sports. And you can do overly a lot better than, so this is very important to push. The other thing that coaches don't understand is that they mean a lot to the kids. So whatever they're doing good can really reflect very positively on their mental health, and whatever they're doing bad can really bring the child down. So, and I see that a lot at clinics with children when they talk about their coaches. So if the coach is not a good influence, I see this on the child. And if they are a good influence, I see this very positive effect on the child.
Okay. Yeah, so the coach has a strong influence on a child.
Yes.
It could be negative, it could be positive. So, I mean, at KODE, we have something called, athlete protection, which is where we develop the coach to understand, like you just said, to look at the child holistically, get to know the child, learn the character, the behaviors. So for us, part of our coach development system is to help the coach become more aware of what holistic, like basically development looks like. For our coaches, what advice, if you had to give them 1 or 2 tips on something they could do better, whether that's doing something for themselves or something for the athletes, what kind of tips could you give our coaches?
Praise them for whatever they do right. Just
praise
give
when
them,
they do right. Okay.
It does miracles. The praise, even with, I advise parents to praise. When you praise someone, everyone wants to feel that they did something good.
Nice.
So when you praise, you push forward.
Okay. Okay. And what could the coach do personally to help? Because we often see that the coach is not quite aware of when they're behaving badly. So how can a coach help themselves develop?
Okay. So they go by the values.
Okay.
So they walk the talk. They encourage. They understand that people have difficulties, that the child is human, and they'd be more understanding. They would work on their anger management control. So sometimes they just have to try to not reflect their own personal problems and difficulties on the child. So if he's not having a good day, they should try to keep that and not reflect on the child. So try to manage their own feelings and difficulties. And like we said, just understand that the child is human. There's so many aspects, and one day he can be not feeling okay, so they need to support them in that.
So they need to be aware of children have feelings and then how they can react.
They're not just performers.
Yeah. And often it's an escape for a child coming to play sport. You know, it shouldn't feel like something's upset to me at home or at school, and then I come to my sanctuary, and now I'm being abused here as well. Yeah, I understand. Okay, so do you have any final tips or thoughts that, especially for parents raising sporty children or children in general, anything we could use to make a more positive life for everybody?
So what I tell parents is that you can't just push your child to excel at everything. He's not number one in everything. So you just push them to their full potential, not to what you want and what you think you want. So just push them to their full potential, and they can't be good at everything. Doesn't make sense.
Right. Love it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.